Hello. Welcome. Our friend Stacey will be joining in just a few. Till then, reminder tonight's brought to you by No CD on our Wednesday night webinar. Good to have all of you here. Always fun to chat, check out your questions, see what's going on, and we'll get started here in a moment. Reminder tonight's brought to you by No CD. If you're looking for help for OCD or related conditions, check us out at nocd.com. That's nocd.com, where we have our care team waiting right now to chat with you if you're looking for help to get set up with a therapist. We take insurance. We're in multiple countries across the world, so we'd be happy to assist. And there's my friend Stacey Conroy. Hello, Stacey Conroy.
Hello.
Good to see you. All right. Well, as we like to, Stacey and I always talk about OCD. Sometimes we talk about substance use also, if that comes up, but that's the thing that we do together, our OCD SUD special interest group for the International OCD Foundation. And it's an interest of ours. So let's get into it, Stacey, and see what's going on. By the way, welcome. We missed you last time. I hope you're feeling better today than you were last time.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Kay talks about, let's see, the need to know obsession, right? If she hears a song that reminds her of something she's heard before, the anxiety is overwhelming. She has to identify the name of it, hours and hours on Google. I'm at the point where I put AirPods in anywhere I go where there will be music. I'm spending less quality time with my family and losing focus because of this. Any recommendations for ERP would be appreciated. Well, what's wrong with not knowing about a song is what I would ask. Right? Why must you know where the song came from? That's interesting. What would happen to you if you didn't know where the song came from? What would be so terrible about that? Right?
Well, and this is one of the games that OCD plays constantly.
Wait, OCD plays games? Are you saying that?
Yeah.
Oh, I wonder if you could tell more about that. Maybe you have some lived experience of it.
Maybe just a little. Yeah. Well, when you read the question and said the need to know, my brain went, yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the need for certainty is, to know something, to be certain about something, to understand something. And it does. It takes us down rabbit holes where we spend hours and hours and hours trying to figure something out or nullify something or do a compulsion to address an obsessive intrusive thought. And it does. It takes you away from the things that you value. It spends a lot of time and energy and effort and pulls you away from those things that you rather be doing in life, like riding roller coasters and going to theme parks,
Your personal favorite thing in the world, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Any good ones lately?
No, just the standard ones,
Okay. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Do they know you at Disney now? Like, are you on a first name basis with many people there? Or?
Oh, Disney, Universal. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep, all of them. Like, you're back.
Yeah. You're gonna get one of those special entry passes to the new park, aren't you, when it opens up? I have a feeling.
Patrick, I've already been to the new park 4 times and
gosh.
next Tuesday, so yeah.
Is it awesome?
It is epic.
It's epic. When does it officially open? Right?
Tomorrow.
But you've been in there 4 times already.
Yes. Been in there 4 times already. It officially opens tomorrow.
All right. Well, yeah.
So
I won't ask you to give anything away before the official opening, but I bet it's pretty cool. What's the theme of it, by the way?
It has different lands. So there's Super Nintendo Land, there's New Harry Potter, there's a How to Train Your Dragon, and a Monsters Unchained. So,
I would like How to Train Your Dragon. I think that's pretty. I'm excited for the How to Train Your Dragon live action film coming out. I think that's going to be.
Yes, as am I.
Yeah, I loved that movie. I thought it was amazing. So. Jake says, I've been making progress, not giving in to thought energy. Existential things do come up at times. When your existential harm OCD things pop up, you seem to get caught up in explaining free will, your values, and OCD picks apart everything and how I could do something, yet I tried to prove that I won't. Oh, well, that sounds like an endless loop of no goodness right there, of figuring out all the ways you could do something and then having to try to explain to yourself why you wouldn't actually do it, right? Yeah. That screams OCD to me right there. I don't know about you, but
Oh, yeah. Treadmill.
Jake, we're going to give you a hint right now, which is you could do this for the rest of your life and still not find a satisfying answer. Right. Stacey and I have not yet met anyone who's done enough thinking about their OCD to get to a point where they felt good about something.
No. And despite many, many sleepless hours working on this problem, I did not find an acceptable answer.
Be nice to have those hours back, I would bet, huh? Just maybe could have done some more roller coastering or something of that nature.
Yeah. More roller coasting, more friends, more sleep.
More sleep in the midnight.
Yes, because it's really fun to have these thoughts at 2 a.m.
Less drug use as a way to try to sleep.
Yeah. Few less lost nights and mornings to alcohol, and there's an idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jay Winter says, when I got an obsession over alcohol, how do I perform ERP? Okay, here, I'll put this up here. In AA, they call that romancing the drink. Working out had to become a compulsion, but now it's no longer working. Thoughts of drinking come. I don't know how to sit with this exposure. The desire becomes stronger. What are your thoughts on that? That's an interesting one, Stacey.
Yeah, no, it is. Because you do have the thought, but you can't expose yourself to alcohol because, technically, if you are an alcoholic, and I identify that way, I'm not trying to label you, but if alcohol is a problem for you, you can't expose yourself to alcohol, so you find ways to, focus on other aspects of recovery. And what I would do there is I would expose yourself more to, and the exposure isn't to alcohol, but I don't know how to frame this one. I'm thinking it through in my head.
Well, you could be exposed to alcohol ads because they're everywhere, right? Not try to avoid them. You could talk about alcohol.
You
right?
could go to places like weddings, stuff like
family
that.
Parties,
Family parties and
restaurants.
Stuff. Yes. But what I would also say is, because there is an aspect of, risk. This seems a little bit like a safety behavior, but take someone with you the first few times you do the exposure, because I have run into people who did exposures and they picked up a drink before they left the restaurant. It's kind of, so it can get tricky because there's a real, we tell people to expose yourself, even though your brain tells you there's risk, but there's risk here. It's like, if you have an obsession about skydiving without a parachute, we're not going to tell you to go skydiving without a parachute, so, there are ways to do the ERP, like Patrick said. You can expose yourself to ads in a safe place. Then you could step it up and go to a restaurant, family gathering where people know you have a problem with alcohol. There are ways to do it. But you can also flip the script and work a little bit on exposing yourself to recovery, in terms of thinking more about, and again, it's hard because the AA principles in my head are interfering with OCD treatment principles in my head. Well, ping pong a little bit, but it's like exposures to hope. When people struggle with hope and avoid it and won't do that. So you can do exposures to hope, like exposure to recovery. What would it look like if you were full in on your recovery, as an aspect, if that makes sense.
One of the things that I might wonder too is that you say you have an obsession over alcohol. So is that truly OCD? Is my first question. Or are you thinking a lot about alcohol? We're saying because I think about it a lot, it's an obsession, but is there actually a compulsion that you perform as a way to neutralize the alcohol thinking? You don't mention that. So I don't know that we have uh, OCD. I'm just going to throw that out there, period. I mean, it could be a substance use disorder, right? And we're
Right.
using OCD words to describe it, but the other piece, oh, go ahead, Stacey. You want to say
Well, I was
something?
going to say, but that's part of the thing about OCD and SUD. If you have both,
Yeah.
they play ping pong off of each other, because
Right.
you do get obsessive over the drink or the drug, and you spend hours thinking about it, thinking how you might use it, if you wouldn't use it, avoiding it. And so there's a lot of similarities between the two conditions. And if you have both, you really do get stuck in that same pattern, even
Yeah.
though you don't have, you may not have a compulsive behavior,
Right.
but sometimes the compulsive behavior becomes like switching out thoughts. Like, I'm thinking too much about alcohol, so I need to think about a good thought, or I need to do step work, or I need to attend more meetings. And you can become compulsive about your AA, the way sometimes when people have scrupulosity, they become compulsive about their religious beliefs. It's okay to go to AA, it's okay to practice the steps, but you want to do it in a manner that it's laid out, and you don't want it to become the compulsive behavior to try to neutralize the obsessions about the alcohol.
There you go. Yeah. And one of the things that we did back when I had a residential, we worked with a company called Virtually Better, and we had their virtual reality system, and we had a VR ERP experience for alcohol. We could bring people into parties, into bars, and it was all virtual. We
Mhm.
could we could put a virtual drink out on a table in front of someone. We had a smell machine that would even blow the smell of the drink at them, right? And it wasn't about picking it up and drinking it. It was about being around it and the cues that surrounded it. And many people said, I thought I'd be ready to go home tomorrow, but I think I might need another day or two, because that was pretty triggering and I could really feel some urges coming up, right? So
Right.
we did use that, and it was very, very helpful for people to deal with those cravings and those urges that they were experiencing, to learn that they could handle those thoughts and images and urges about alcohol.
Yeah. Well, because one of the things that you learn over time in any treatment program for alcohol, or whether AA, Smart Recovery, Women for Sobriety, is that it's not the obsession about the drink that's the problem. It's how you respond to it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Imagine that. And OCD too. The
Yes.
the obsession, well, I could have the same thoughts or images or urges as anyone with OCD and have a very different reaction to it.
Yep.
Mhm. Jay says something from last time. Say it's simple yet profound when you said, if you're diagnosed with scrupulosity, why would you be looking for excuses to sin? Yeah, there you go. Mm-hmm. Good to think about. Let's see. How do you get out of she corrects, food circle where you have heard info on food and can't let it go and it's affecting you? Well, geez, I hear info on food all the time. You know how many people with OCD try to tell me about how many things are contaminated or might have this germ or that virus or this disease or anything of that nature. So yeah. Mhm.
Guilty.
Yeah. And I still eat all the food. So, I mean, you asked, how do you get out of the food circle? Well, not by doing compulsions. Compulsions will keep you in the food circle, right? Response prevention. Now, this is what gets you out of the food circle. Doing the opposite of compulsions and allowing yourself to learn that you can handle the discomfort that the obsession brings about. That's the stuff that really helps. That's the stuff that gets you through the experience. If you want to be better, you do response prevention. If you want to stay the same, you do compulsions. I don't know that we could say it much simpler than that, Stacey. Maybe you have something else, but
No, you really can't.
mm-hmm.
You know, and I will say this, and I've said it many times before, but it's the truth. ERP was the hardest thing I did, but it got me the furthest in my recovery process.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will acknowledge that, you know, we talk about it and it's a simple concept. It can be hard to engage in, but just because it's hard to engage in does not mean you should not do it. It brought me further along in my recovery than anything else ever had.
And it sustained things better than anything ever has,
Yes.
too, probably. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Kristen says, any tips on managing your OCD when you have multiple themes going on at once, such as contamination and harm? Well, Stacey, I'm assuming your OCD didn't just conveniently say, we'll just do one thing at a time, correct?
It's like, I don't understand one, okay? I never had one beer. I never smoked one joint, and I never did one compulsion.
Mm-hmm.
And I never had one thought, you know, just one thought.
Yeah.
At the same time, ever. I like the t-shirts and the mugs that say, don't walk a mile in my shoes, spend 30 seconds in my head.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how did you manage that with all those things going on at the same time?
You do various ERPs. To be honest, I line them up and I dealt with them one at a time. If you have multiple ones at the same time, you have to choose which ones are interfering with your life maybe the most, or you can deal with them as they come up because they come up in different contexts. You know, so sometimes you deal with ERP as it shows up in your life. Like if there's an opportunity to do exposure, then response prevention, you do it when it comes up. Or you can do a more formal planning it out. But yeah, work on the one that's interfering, you know, I want to say the most, but they kind of sometimes just do this. It's interfering across the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if something is interfering across the board, you know, let's work together. Plus,
yeah.
There isn't anything that prevents you from doing multiple different exposures in one day, right? So
No.
if harm, say, is more about when you get home from work, but it's not really bugging you at work, but at work perfectionism is going on or contamination, then at work you could do contamination things. And when you get home, you could switch to harm related things and do it that way. Nothing stops you from doing it that way, right?
Nope.
Okay. So, Kristen, I would say that's something to really consider. Are there spaces and times where one makes more sense to work on than others, and prioritize which ones you're going to work on at the times you're going to work on them?
Yep.
Alexandra says, can you recover if you're using your ERP as a compulsion? Suggestions if I am using my ERP as a compulsion. I guess I'd want to know how you might be doing that, right? Are you having to perfectly do ERP? And then if that's the case and you're working with a therapist, you can come up with non-perfect ways to do ERP. Or, as weird as this will sound coming from me or Stacey, maybe once in a while you have an obsession and you don't do ERP in response to it, right? You just, maybe once in a while you let the compulsion happen. I'm not saying in the long term for this by any means, okay? But maybe you just kind of prove to yourself, you know what? I'm not going to let OCD take over my recovery of OCD. Because if you want a surefire way for OCD recovery to fail, let OCD take over OCD recovery.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
I've not yet seen anything where OCD's made things better.
And you won't.
And I don't. Yeah, I have no no thought in my head that will ever be something that will occur. Right.
Yeah.
While I never say anything's impossible, I'd bet the farm on that one, that I will not in my lifetime meet someone who said, yeah, OCD really made my life better.
Not going to happen.
Okay.
Or else we'd prescribe it, as you've said before,
Mm-hmm.
If OCD made your life better, we would tell people, oh, here, have a little OCD.
Lexi says, I've been dealing with some OCD at times. It's been pretty relentless the last few months. I've noticed a pattern that when I'm doing well with an exposure, and I would say, and response prevention, I might line up some more exposures and then potentially get overwhelmed. How do you determine the proper pace when continuing up an ERP hierarchy? How do I know if it's too soon to try another exposure? These questions sound very OCD to me. I don't know about you, Stacey, but they have a flavor of obsessive compulsive disorder in the questions, as if there's only one right way to do this. Wait, this sounds similar to last thing.
I'm doing it right.
Yeah, this sounds like the last one. OCD seems to be trying to take over OCD treatment, and if I don't do it the right way or at the right pace or at the right time, then it's not going to work for me, right? And then I'll be stuck in all of this all over again, and OCD wins.
Yes.
So, Lexi, this is where I want to make sure you're working with a therapist on this, right, Lexi? That otherwise, if you're trying to do this on your own, you might be easily swayed by what OCD is telling you to do. And it may sound like, oh, well, that was a very wise statement there, but OCD is an ass and can imitate anything and can come across any way in order to get you to do something. Right? So there is no need to listen to obsessive compulsive disorder. I've not found one. Stacey's not found one. Now, how do I know if it's too soon to try another ERP? Well, that could change depending on the levels of ERP that you're doing as well, right? Maybe as you are starting off, you don't do too many at first just because you allow yourself to learn how to handle the inhibitory learning, the habituation that's occurring. But as you get to become really good at it as a pro, you might not need as many ERP exercises on some of the later things because you've really got the pattern down and you can really start to see and understand the way that it works without needing as much practice on it, right?
Yeah, it becomes, you understand the pattern and you can, the only thing that comes to mind is like get there faster. Like once you know the pattern, you don't get as stuck in it and then you can address it faster. If that, like OCD would sneak up on me and I didn't realize I was, engaged in it at first. And then as I learned more about it and learned the pattern, I could identify, oh yeah, hold on. This really feels like I'm stuck here. I'm on the treadmill. I'm going to worst case scenarios. Like I found some ways to really identify when I was getting caught up in things. And when I identified it sooner, then I could address it sooner with ERP. And the amount of time it took me to go from here to here with ERP got shorter and shorter because I knew the process and I learned to trust the process a bit more. So it didn't take as much time. When I first started ERP, it was like a whole to do. I do it in therapy for like an hour and a half. And then I, have these whole blocks of time that I had set aside. And then I just started seeing when it showed up in my life, like, oh, hold on. Immediately, OCD just told me that this is, dangerous and wrong. And that it's stopping me from engaging in something I wanted to do while I was out in the world. So I was like, no, we're just going to do ERP, with it right here. Here's the exposures in front of me. And the response prevention is something I now understand. So this is what I'm going to do. This is my response prevention. And you do it, and then you can go back to what you want. When it shows up again, you can identify it and do the response prevention. And eventually, you get to a point where it became part of me. Like something would show up, I'd understand the next step I needed to do, and I did it. So it went from this very structured, formal thing to just being part of my life.
And then you start living in an ERP way instead of an OCD way, right?
Yes. And which gets you back into your life.
Right.
And there are times where I go, that was a very interesting thought, little dude in my head. Thank you. But no, I'm not going to bite that hook today.
Mm-hmm.
I just go back to living my life. But I've started to understand that, as I said in Star Wars, it's a trap.
It's a trap.
Yeah, it's a trap, and you don't eventually get to the point where you don't bite the hook, and you can go back to whatever it was you were focused on.
Mm-hmm. Casey says, I'm 16 with harm OCD, but I'm trying to convince myself it's not OCD and that I'm a psychopath and I want to hurt people. I try to talk about it, but I just get stuck. Is it OCD? This is one of those times where people will test themselves, right, with OCD. And maybe I'm using OCD as an excuse. What if I'm actually this other thing? This can even prevent people from coming in for treatment at times, right? Because they're afraid of, what if somebody tells me, even though everybody has said and everything I've read has said OCD, but what if the therapist I meet with says, oh no, it's something else entirely? Am I willing to take that risk and find this thing out, right? And if I am a psychopath, isn't it better to do something about it right now, like call the police on myself, than one day just lose it and become awful and horrible and terrible? Would you add anything to that?
No. No.
Okay.
No. Yeah. Well,
You want to say
I do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because I've worked with a few people who, when OCD treatment gets hard, I've worked with a few people who have been misdiagnosed. And so they have the diagnosis of psychosis or delusional disorder, and it's really OCD. But when the OCD work gets hard, they come back to me and go, are you sure it's not this?
There you go. Yeah.
So I see this a lot, but it's OCD.
I want to go down a quick road here, only because there are times when people hear stories about OCD and OCD being afraid of, what if I'm something else, like I have schizophrenia or psychopathy or something of that nature. And people from those diagnoses might hear this and think, how dare you pick on us?
Right.
I just want to say to anybody who feels that way, OCD doesn't give a shit about you or your diagnosis or anything like that. If OCD has decided that whatever you have, be it any physical, mental condition, would be the worst thing in the world to ever have, that is what it is going to grab onto. It is not a personal thing against you or anybody who has this condition. It is OCD's decision on, this is the worst case scenario.
And it always goes after the worst case scenario.
Yeah. I mean, I could say to you, Stacey, if I had OCD, the worst thing that could ever happen to me in my life would be I would be a drug user, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you be offended by that?
No.
No, right. Because at this point, you'd also probably say the worst thing I could ever do in my life is go back to using drugs. Right?
Yeah, I'd be like, you know what? You might be right.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, OCD will always go for worst case scenario, and if it's something that distresses you, that will be its target.
So I just want to say that because you will have people now and then who just who hear these things and then just think, oh well, that was just why would anyone think that?
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to logic OCD, folks. Right?
Oh, oh.
Please do not. Please do not.
I did. I tried for
Yeah.
years.
For years. How'd it go?
It didn't.
Law says intrusive thoughts are one thing, but I have a fear of my future children being born with an illness. The universe conspires every single day through people, videos, and numbers to trigger me and trap me. Why does the universe conspire against me when I have to have a trigger-free day? The odds of things happening how they do on a daily basis is impossible. Still, they happen. It's deeper than OCD. Thanks for your help. Obviously not impossible if they happen. Therefore, hello OCD, right? In telling you that they are impossible. I think that's where the OCD comes in, is that you've fallen for this idea that this is impossible, and the only reason for it, therefore, to have happened must be that the universe is conspiring against me. That sounds like an obsession kind of type of thing to me. Now, Stacey, in the depths of your OCD time, did it feel at times like everything was out to get you?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for your candid answer there, Stacey.
Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yes. And yeah, it does. You get overwhelmed and you spend a lot of time doing, rituals and mental and compulsions and thoughts. And in my case, drinking, to, offset that. But yeah, no, it feels like at every turn, there's something. And that, something bad is absolutely going to happen. So yeah, you feel like everything is out to get you.
Yeah.
And it's a hard place to be. That's the other aspect of this is when you feel like that, it's very heavy. It takes a toll on not only, your mental health, but also your physical health, because you don't sleep right, you don't eat right, you don't socialize, you cut people off. One of the things about OCD and SUD is it makes your world smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, to where you're just stuck in this unhealthy pattern of thinking and compulsing. And even if you look okay to the outside, like you're still going to work or you're still going to school, inside, that you're not. And that is a real heavy place to be. So I do this to say that recovery is possible. I worked with a therapist. I did a lot of work for a lot of years to get where I'm at. So don't take any of this to say that it doesn't take time, energy, and effort for recovery, because it does. But when you put the time in, when you learn the ERP techniques, when you become willing to stand up to OCD, it pays off. I've never met anybody who's gotten into a recovery process with OCD that says, I would give it back. It doesn't happen. So
yeah, no.
Did I hate the work? Yes. Is it hard? Yes. And getting out of that place of anxiety and fear and heaviness is challenging, but it's worth doing. It's worth reaching out. It's worth getting with a therapist. It's worth learning about OCD, learning about ERP, and then engaging in the exposure work. It is scary, but OCD is worse. Once you get into doing ERP and you really start to identify and see some of the benefits, same with, getting sober. When you first get sober, first you got to go through detox. You're puking your guts out. You feel horrible. Your muscles are in fold, but you get through those initial first steps of reaching out, and then learning, how to live life without a drink, how to live life with doing ERP, developing those skill sets. Recovery is the bomb. You can never have it back. It's mine. I'm keeping it. But those first few therapy sessions, or those first few weeks or months in recovery, learning to live life without drugs and alcohol, they are tough. And, kick, scream, throw things, but hang in there.
I would say, maybe the adage comes through here that nothing worthwhile probably comes all that simple to people, right?
Yeah.
At least most people. There's a few folks out there that can, have some kind of thing going on in their brain in some way that they could hear a song and then sit down at a piano and play it, right? But let's not wait around for those types of things to happen to our lives. The vast majority of us have to make those things happen in our lives, right? I love to say, don't wait around for the miracle, make the miracle.
Yeah.
That's what people have to do. Make the miracle.
Yes. And I've said this before, time, TIME, things I must earn. But things I must earn changes into today is mine, enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Zoe says, I need so badly to tame my somatic OCD. I've had countless panic attacks because I think I'm having some sudden, random, fatal allergic reaction to something, triggering horrible attacks. Please help. Well, my first suggestion is, have you done interoceptive exposures? And if not, get a copy of a book called The Panic Attacks Workbook, and then which is my buddy Dave Carbonell has got great stuff. And then the other one is An End to Panic by Ellie Zucker White, which has all the list of the great interoceptive exposure that you can do. And if you're trying to think panic away, that ain't gonna happen, right? You got to teach yourself that you can handle panic sensations and deal with them. And that's the way that you're going to overcome panic. That's what's going to work. Mario says, how effective is medication in reducing the severity of OCD in general, especially peripheral OCD? I struggle extensively with this condition and can barely stand to be in class at times around others. Well, medication can definitely help, right? But the American Psychiatric Association says the go-to treatments for OCD are ERP or ERP plus medication, right? So they don't even suggest medication by itself. So if you're going to do the evidence-based care, Mario, do exposure and response prevention therapy or exposure and response prevention therapy plus medication.
Yeah, this isn't scientifically based, but it's my rule of thumb. Is I tell people that, medications are not bad, but I say they do 30% of the work. That leaves 70% up to therapy and changing behaviors and responses. So, and again, that's not scientific. I can't point you to a research study. It's just my way of saying medications do help. I was on a number of them myself for quite a while, but they're not going to solve it for you completely. And that's where the therapy comes in. And the most effective is, ERP or ERP and medication, like Patrick said. But there's always something that you have to do. There's no magic pill for OCD. Medications do help. But anybody who tells you if you take this and your OCD will be cured, run.
Yeah. Do I just go on with my task that I'm doing in that moment and move on? Yeah. Here's the thing. Sometimes therapists will say to you, sit with the discomfort. I go a step further. Live with the discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just sit with it.
Yeah.
Act with it.
Yeah.
Live with it. Be
Bring
with
it with you.
Allow for it. Bring it with you. Take it on vacation, right? Whatever. There's an interesting part, the way that our bodies function. You ready for an anatomy lesson, Stacey? I know this will shock you as what I'm about to say. So let me just hang on tight here. Might want to check your lap belts and bars to make sure that they're secure before we get on this ride that we're about to go down here. But the way our bodies are built, no matter where we go, our brain goes with us.
Shit.
I know. Isn't that fascinating? No matter where you go, your brain goes with you.
That explains a lot.
It does, doesn't it? And now you know why OCD's there all the time. Because no matter where you go, your brain goes with you.
Yes. And I swear to it, again, not scientific fact, but I swear my brain woke up at least 2 minutes before my body did. Because it was going before I physically started moving.
You were still in the womb going, where am I? What's going on?
Yeah. No.
Since your brain goes with you wherever you go, there's nothing you're going to be able to do without your brain being there. Because the last time I checked, the guillotine in France really proved this point very well. When your brain was no longer with you, you didn't function very well. You were not. It was kind of done at that point. So we can thank the French for that one. But it means that, yeah, you go on, and you do things, and you live with this thing. Now, lots of people will say to me, but I don't want to live with this thing. And, too freaking bad, right? I don't want to live with tinnitus, but I have it.
Yeah, thanks. I joined that club last year.
Oh, it's a fun one, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I've had it for 25 years already, Stacey.
I know. And when I got it, I kept hearing you in my head, not in my ear, but in my head saying, yeah, I don't even hear it until I think about it. And
yeah.
Boop. There it is.
Yeah. So one of you doesn't want to live with this fear that you're going to be contaminated. Another one of you doesn't want to live with the fear that you've just run someone over. Another one of you doesn't want to live with the fear that you've harmed a child. Another one of you doesn't want to live with the fear of what if there's no afterlife. Another one of you doesn't want to live with the fear of what if this is just the Matrix. I don't want to live with this sound that I hear 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And guess what all of us have to do?
I don't want to live with being legally blind.
Yeah. There you go.
And I certainly don't want to live with having to put sunscreen on every single day.
Well, damn that albinism.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but you have to.
But I'm going to play an OCD person for a moment. Stacey, you be you, and I'm going to play. But mine feels so real.
If it didn't feel real, it wouldn't be OCD.
Yeah. Right. Yours feels so real, and we have proof that Stacey's legal blindness and albinism is real. Right?
Yes.
We don't actually have proof that people's OCD
is real.
Right? But we do have proof that your albinism is real. So I don't want to live with OCD. You don't want to live with albinism. Too fucking bad, everybody.
Yep.
Right? Mm-hmm.
You don't get to pick the cards. You just get to play them.
Yeah. Right. So we live with them. Right. And therefore, that's why I've been saying now, we don't sit with albinism. We live with albinism. Right? Yes. You don't sit with legal blindness.
You live with it.
You live with it. Right? I don't sit with tinnitus. I live with it.
And again, you might sit with an OCD thought, like you said, some people say that, but you live with it. Like, I can't say that I never have intrusive thoughts today. I still do, but
So do I.
yeah. But I got closer to your reality, because people without OCD, when they have an intrusive thought, they go, "Oh, that was weird," and they go on. I got an intrusive thought and went, "Hold on, what does this mean? What, and oh my God, that means I'm this person. I'm bad. I'm going to do this. I'm going to have this response." And, now I'm closer to you, and I'm just, that was really weird.
Yeah. Welcome to the vast majority of my day. Where the fuck that come from? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also build a life around that, like I built a life around being legally blind. It's not that I don't do things. I go to, I've traveled, been to Japan and other countries and conferences and do roller coasters and,
hiking. You're a hiker.
Yep.
You're a legally blind hiker.
Yeah.
Right.
Which can be very interesting at times. Yes. I literally had a friend of mine, and I don't suggest doing this. This is one of those moments where I'm glad I survived. Thank you. We both had our white canes dangling down to try to figure out how far down it was, and we're like, I wonder how far down that is. So we jumped. Fortunately, it was only about, 7 feet. So it wasn't that far, but yeah. But the point is not to that. The point, going back, is that you can build a life around living with OCD. OCD doesn't go away, can get quieter, unlike the tinnitus, but you build your life around it. You learn to live with it. Act on your life and bring it along with you. It is a companion with me, and it sticks its head up every once in a while. And I've just, again, learned how to identify it. And if I need to do an ERP around something, I can weave that into my day now. But not everything. I've gotten to the point where I just go, that was really weird. Like, thank you, brain. I gotta go,
Yeah. Like I said, that's the vast majority of my day. Where the hell did that come from? Okay. Yeah. That's fine. So yes, we go on with our task that we're doing. We move on. We live with, and we learn we can handle. We don't have to like.
No.
We don't have to be comfortable. We learn that we can handle. And that's if you're a student dealing with schoolwork, if you're an adult working with a job, you're in retirement, it doesn't matter. Right?
Nope.
You accept whatever those thoughts, those images or urges on, and you're like, all right, and then you move on and you live your life.
And you learn that you can live with uncertainty.
Yeah. Right. Well, we already do. I mean,
well, yeah, we don't have a choice there either. We like to think we do. There's this whole effort to control this idea that we're going to find certainty. No.
Last month, I went to do the webinar and Stacey wasn't there. She said she had a headache. I had to do it all by myself.
Yes. And I'm sure you did fine.
I think so, but I don't know. Maybe it sucked. I don't,
Yeah, you're uncertain. And guess what? You're still living your life.
I'm still living my life, right? Yeah. Oh, well, but that uncertainty is not as bad as my uncertainty. My uncertainty is worse than that. And then, as I would always joke about whenever we would do OCD group at the hospital, the new person would always come in, start hearing other people talk, and say to the person next to them, I wish I had that kind of OCD. That'd be really, really easy to handle that one because mine's the worst. And everybody in the group would pause and go, ha, ha, yeah, we said that too when we joined the group as well.
Yeah.
Every single person who joined that group at some point said, geez, I wish I had that kind of OCD.
Yeah, and until the theme pops up in your head and you're like, never mind.
Yep, right.
Yeah. But uncertainty can be fun. I'm going to go back to theme parks because there's a whole bunch of new roller coasters that I've been on. Okay, hello, legally blind. Get on a new roller coaster. I have no idea where this roller coaster is going. because I can't see the elements. Sighted people get on a roller coaster and they can see, oh, we're going to go up, we're going to go down, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I get on the roller coaster, I am clueless. I just hold on for dear life until I ride it 10 times and figure it out.
And then you know, like, right?
Yeah. Then I have a little bit of an understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very metaphorical for it. Like when you start doing something, it's scary. You might not know what the outcome is. You're uncertain. Then you get the pattern down, and you realize that you can live with those uncomfortable feelings. And then you're like, okay, I'm just going to live my life and enjoy the ride.
And, I want to point out the obvious here, but I think it's interesting. You've lived your life legally blind and gone out and done all these ridiculous things that people with sight won't even do, with no fear of them whatsoever. And yet, things that popped into your head you were so afraid of that other people didn't care about at all. I mean, so it logically makes no sense whatsoever on either side of it, right?
Yep. Nope.
But hey, let's if we could all agree to throw logic out the window for a while, please, everybody. If we could just agree to do that would be great. See you later, logic. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the Vulcan sign for live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper. Exactly. Yeah. Are phobias a form of OCD? No, they're an anxiety disorder. They can seem like OCD, but phobias are really a specific fear of a thing, typically, or a theme of a thing, and usually a lot of safety behaviors. But for the vast majority of people, the safety behavior could be avoidance. So if I have a flying phobia, I'm just never going to fly. And my life now will be not interfered with because why? I'm not flying. Why? And so there's no compulsions that need to be done in that situation. You're not thinking about flying when you're not flying, when you have a flying phobia, because you've just decided I'm just never going to fly. So therefore, it's a little bit different than obsessive compulsive disorder.
Yes, I have a friend of mine who won't go on a theme park ride because there's spiders in it. And they have a phobia of spiders. Yeah. I did not know this, and I took them on the ride. They were not happy with me, but now they will not go on that ride. So yeah, and it's just pure avoidance. Done. Doesn't bother them at all. They're like, go ride the ride. I'll be in the store.
Christina says, I think it's important to have some quality sobriety time before practicing ERP. I know early in my recovery, I could not have done exposure. So just your thoughts on that, Stacey.
Well, sometimes you can't get into recovery until you're doing ERP. So,
yeah,
again, I'm not going to say that what you did was wrong, but there's another subset of individuals who can't get into recovery until they can address their OCD. So sometimes you have to do concurrent treatment, whether that's, having a therapist that understands both, which is rare, but or working with somebody who really understands OCD and going to 12 steps or smart recovery. So you're dealing with both at the same time. Some people do it in a tier. They get into recovery and then they do their mental health work. But I personally, mine was somewhat separated because that's what they thought you had to do. But I did not get into recovery right away until I started doing some work around my mental health stuff. So when it was just about, the drugs and alcohol, I went to detox like 7 or 8 times. And the last time I went was when I did concurrent treatment around my anxiety disorders. And I started with PTSD and then ended with, OCD, because I have both, but I couldn't have stayed in recovery had I not done some concurrent work. So people will have to decide what is right for them and what works for them. If you can do it, sobriety first and wait, more power to you. I was on a treadmill of that. And I've been in recovery a long time. So that was the prevailing theory, is you had to have a year in recovery before anybody would talk to you about your anxiety. Well, I kept going back to detox and going back to, I couldn't do it. And then when somebody started doing some concurrent treatment with me around my anxiety and my substance use, that is when it finally clicked and I was able to get long-term recovery. And even with that, I say that was more of, traditional CBT. It wasn't ERP, and it got me better. But when I got with somebody who understood OCD and did ERP treatment, it got me well. So better is where you can function and the world thinks you're okay because you're showing up to work or school, but inside you have that internal struggle and you're still doing compulsions and limiting your life. And well is when your insides and your outsides match. And it blew my mind when I got there because I never thought it was possible.
And another way to do it is we had the residential program, so we could do both at the same time because there was at least a very good predictor that you weren't going to be using because we had locked doors and we searched people and everything. So we had a very significant belief that you weren't going to be using while you were doing the ERP, and therefore you could do both at the same time. Yeah. So everyone's circumstance is going to play a role in that. That's for sure.
A little differently. Yeah. But your residential was unique because if you're trying to get into residential OCD treatment, the first thing they often ask you is how long have you been sober?
Yeah.
So the theory still is out there that, you can't do one until the other's taken care of. But I say that I don't know that that's workable for everybody. And concurrent treatment is something that can be considered. And, if you try it one way and it doesn't work, you could try it the other way. Nobody's locked into something, but, some people are going to need concurrent treatment in order to get their recovery off the ground.
Well, people have spent an hour with us.
Yes, which amazes me. They keep doing this.
I know. They keep coming back. They do. It's our stunning good looks, I think, is probably what it is. Yeah.
Oh, that you have good looks?
I know. You can't see me, but I'm very handsome, just so you know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's true.
I mean, I have good looks. Right.
So people tell you. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. The mirrors in my house are for collecting dust.
Yeah, there you go. Well, thank you once again, Stacey, and tell them a little bit about our special interest group.
We have the OCD SUD special interest group, and we have a website. It's www.ocdsud.com. We have resources up there for SUD, OCD combined. We have some great videos of Patrick talking about OCD and SUD. We do try to get some newer things up there. I've been a little behind on that, but there's a lot of good information, a lot of links to different webinars, some done by the IOCDF, some, like I said, with Patrick. So check it out, see if there's resources there. And you can also contact us. There's a contact us link there if you want to get on the mailing list for the email group. We don't send out a lot of information, but we do send out information when we can. And I also want to put a plug in for the IOCD conference. If people are going to be going, it's in Chicago this year. If you've never been, it's a really amazing opportunity. So if you're in the area, because they do move it around so people can afford to go if you can't travel, you're in Chicago area, absolutely. Beg, borrow, steal, do whatever.
Lots of virtual this year, actually. They'll have 7 rooms of virtual this year.
Yes, no, and they're adding that because they want people to have more the accessibility. But, virtual is great. If you can do it, do it. But if you're in the Chicago area, go. Because it fascinated me to be around so many people who got it.
Yeah, that's the International OCD Foundation. The conference will be in July. It's the week after the 4th. So check it out, everyone. And if you're looking for help for OCD, check us out at nocd.com. That's nocd.com, where we do work with body-focused repetitive behaviors, hoarding, tics, OCD, trauma, anxiety, mood issues. We do all sorts of great evidence-based treatments like habit reversal training, CBT for hoarding, ERP for OCD, and all sorts of other great stuff like prolonged exposure for trauma. So nocd.com. Happy to work with all of you. And if you're looking for just information, you're not quite ready, but you want an hour with us, you can do a NoCD 411 session as well, where we will give you tons of great Q&A time, just like we do here, but personalized for you. That being said, we'll be back again next week. John Grayson will be joining me next week for our monthly webinar with him. Until then, everyone, be nice to yourself. At least a lot nicer than OCD is. All right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, everyone.